Hello everyone, today's poem is Daya, 生民, a Daya poem from the Book of Songs. The title, 生民, means the living people, or in today's words, the people, because the ancient Chinese, the people including not only the living people, but also the dead people, their ancestors. So 生民is just 100% equivalent as today's term people, but for the Asian Chinese, they need to point out we are talking about the living people, not our ancestors. This poem is also the first poem of the second subchapter of Daya, 生民之时, the 10 poems of 生民. So this is a very, very important poem as well. And as the first poem in a chapter or subchapter, so this is normally the oldest poem with the history, and we can see that from the terms of this poem. They used a lot of the very ancient terms like 绝. So whenever you see this term 绝, which means this poem is very, very old, even in the poems of Book of Songs. The 绝 identical to 齐. So you can see a lot of the character 齐 in Book of Songs, but not too much of 绝 the character. So you can see some of the differences by these two terms. This poem is a very standard epic poem in the Book of Songs. Even it's not such long as normally we consider it to be, but it's a very, very long poem in the Book of Songs. And the epic poems in the classic Chinese literature is always a big question or a big interest for the literature studies, because first thing first, the oldest epic poems was in the Book of Songs, but it's not so ancient compared to the Chinese history, not so ancient compared to other epic poems in other parts or in other countries of the world, like in the Indian, like in the Middle East. So basically the poems in the Book of Songs was written around roughly 3,000 years before to roughly 2,600 years before. So it's not so ancient. Anyhow, this poem could be one of the most ancient poems in the Book of Songs. Its wording is rather different from most of the poems in Book of Songs. And this poem is not so popular by its wording, but rather by its story. Its story is very, very popular and well known among Chinese. Okay, let's get to the first paragraph. I would focus on the story rather than the wordings. And this poem actually has a lot of the arguments by the historians rather than the writers, the poets. Okay, the first paragraph. 厥初生民，时维姜嫄. The first people, the first generation of people, they started from the time of Jiang Yuan. So Jiang Yuan was treated as the mother of the first Zhou people. The first Zhou people was Houji. This poem is all about Houji. So the first sentence, just go to the point. The first generation of our Zhou people starts from mother Jiangyuan. So from the name Jiangyuan, we can see two things. First thing first, Jiang was the family name, and Yuan very likely could be a fake name. Yuan could be interpreted as two ways. First things first, the platinum. The second explanation means the very original, the first. So the mother, of course, is the first Zhou people. So with the first explanation, the platinum, it refers where the mother lived, which was told as Youtai. You can see the map. It's almost identical to the place of the Zhouyuan, or quite near to the Zhou capital, Zonghao. So this is a basin, basically it's the same place. Okay, the second sentence. 生民如何，克禋克祀，以弗无子. So how about our first generation of Zhou people? They can pray to the God, to the heaven. They can pray to their ancestors in such way to avoid no descendants, no sons, no grandsons. So this means they pray to the heaven, they pray to their ancestors, and the God, their ancestors, blessed them with sons and grandsons. So the Zhou people have generations by generations. Okay, the third sentence. 履帝武敏歆，攸介攸止. So this is a big argument among the historians. So this is the most popular explanation. The mother, Jiangyuan, he stepped on the footprint of the toe of the king Diku. So the king Diku is a figure in the folk story as well. It was written in the history record, but there was no proven evidence from the modern archaeology. And so the mother Jiangyuan stepped on the footprint, the toe on the footprint, because that's a huge footprint, and he was feeling so happy, he was so touched, and so he was get pregnant by stepping on the footprint. So this is a very typical epic story, and a lot of people said this is a reflection of the very ancient social status, because it's sort of the female society, and people don't know their father, who it is, and when the transit from a female society to the male society, and the most ancient, the very first king, very likely was described as some of the miracle happens, and a virgin mother gave birth to that first king or first generation. So it's quite likely among all the other places, other countries' epic stories. But of course, we know just by a female person, they cannot give birth, right? So the normal explanation means they just want to cover up the story, or even they don't know who other father was, so they just make the story as a folk story, as a fairy tale. So I would rather like to believe on another explanation, a less popular explanation to this story. 履帝武敏歆, Wu is a long word as dancing. min is very swiftly, xin is very happily, by the smile. So he smiled a very nice smile when they dance. So this actually is make the story like this. The first mother, Jiang Yuan, he followed the step of Di, the king, and they danced swiftly, happily.攸介攸止. So this is this description of the dancing. They are dancing very happily, mildly, and swing leftwards, swing rightwards. 载震载夙. So this is about the making love. So the third sentence is about how the mother and the king fell in love and make love. The king in the very ancient time normally is a half witch, half king figure. So the dancing is a very, very key ritual for the kings. So this very likely implies it's in a divine ritual. The king make love with the mother, Jiang Yuan, and they have a very happy dance first, and then they make love. The zhen refers to thunder. So the thunder actually is an imply for the intercourse of making love, because the thunder is from heaven and down to the earth. The heaven implies or basically equals to the king in the ancient China, and the queen, the mother, equals to the earth. So by the intercourse between the heaven and the earth, all the creatures was given birth. So that's the very ancient philosophy of China. And so here, Zai Zhen, so they make thunder, which strongly, actually is a direct talk for the ancient Chinese. They are making love. They between the heaven and the earth. And 载夙, 作夙, 夙 means the daybreak. So which daybreak is the early morning also implies gave birth, because when the daybreak, the sun goes up, which is almost a direct talk for the ancient Chinese, gave birth. But this gave birth is only applied to the kings. The king is the sun, the heaven. And then 载生载育, 时维后稷. Sheng, we have talked, is not produce, not give birth. It's a living thing. 载生, make him alive, because when you give birth to a baby, very likely sometimes he don't breathe. So this actually gave us a lot of details of this very ancient story. 载生, so make the baby alive. 载育, make to cultivate the baby, to brought up the baby. And 时 means season in the ancient Chinese. So, and basically it means time, the span of time. So after a span of time, he became the so-called Houji. So today we still call this first Zhou people as Houji or Qi. Qi is his name. Houji is actually a title of a position in the central government. Hou basically means the chief officer. Ji means crops. Even it's one of the crops, but basically in the Chinese means all the crops. So this position means he is the minister of the agriculture. He is responsible for all the agriculture and crops. So the first paragraph basically gave us an overview of Houji. that his mother, how he encountered the king, and they have the intercourse, and finally gave birth to Houji, and then one day he became the Houji we know today, the Minister of the Agriculture. Okay, the second paragraph. 诞弥厥月，先生如达。When the full months of pregnancy reached, the first kid was given birth. 先生 today means master, teacher, but here means the first kid of the mother, 姜嫄。不坼不副，无菑无害，以赫厥灵。When mother gave birth to the child, her birth canal doesn't slip, and there's no need to use knife to cut it open. 坼 means slip. 副 means to use knife to cut something open. So this means this was explained why 以赫厥灵. So this is to show that this birth, this new baby was a saint. 以赫厥灵. 赫 means to show up. 无菑无害 means there's no harm, there's no damage. So this all means to the mother. So when the mother gave birth to Houji, to the first Zhou people, there's no harm to her body. So all the signs shows something divine, and it shows this baby is sent. Okay, the third sentence. 上帝不宁，不康禋祀，居然生子。So the God doesn't feel calmful. It's not calmful. He's a little bit upset because the mother, Jiang Yuan, didn't pray to God, didn't pray to her ancestors. He just stayed there and have a baby. The second paragraph is quite interesting. It even gives the details of giving birth, that the birth canal has no damage, the mother has no damage on her body, and the new baby shows his divinity. And finally, this upset the God in heaven, because be careful, the heaven in God in the second paragraph very likely is different from the king in the first paragraph. 履帝武敏歆. In the first paragraph, 武帝吕敏歆 very likely is referring to the king in the human world. In the second paragraph, it clearly noted as 上帝, the king above. So this is the God in heaven. So the whole story basically is like this. The mother have an intercourse with the king in the human world, and finally have a baby. The baby was the first generation, first Zhou people, finally so-called as Houji. And when the new baby was given birth, the God in the heaven was so upset. Okay, the third paragraph. 但置之爱象，牛羊匪自知. The father was put in the humble and narrow streets. The cows, the bulls, and the sheep, they feed him, they cover him, protect him. 但置之平林，会伐 平林. The father was put into the forest. The bulls, the sheep, they meet up in the forest to cover, to protect, to feed him. 旦置之寒冰，鸟复翼之. The father was put on the ice in the winter, and the birds, they use their wings, use their feathers to cover him up, to protect him. 鸟乃去矣，后羿瓜矣. When the birds are living, 后羿 was crying out loud. 时胆，时谈时虚，绝声载夙. The sound was so loud, was so long, and the crying was all over of the road. So this basically gave us the story how the father, Hou Yi, was grown up. So because the God in heaven doesn't like him, so the mother, normally we think his mother put him in the narrow streets to abandon this looks like an evil baby, right? So she just abandoned the new baby, but the bulls, the cows, the sheep feed him and protect him in the narrow streets. And then the mother threw the new baby to the forest, and then the bulls and the sheep went to the forest to continue to protect him, to feed him. And the mother abandoned the baby on the cold ice in winter, and then the birds get down to the ground, use their feather, use their wings to protect, to cover him. So finally, someday the people realized it's not right. The baby has his own way. He was protected by the nature, so he should has his way to live on. And so the people treat him as a normal baby again, and pick up the new baby back to the tribe, to the family. But here it was written in a quite strange and maybe genius way. He doesn't say the people come down to the baby and take him back. He just said the birds go away, and the baby cry out loud. So some of the words here is quite interesting. 但 normally was explained as 大. So I do think here use the character to refers to the first Zhou people, Hou Yi. 大 means father normally, and you know the chairman Xi has a nickname, Xi Dada, so which means the father Xi, and father is not has so many meanings in a lot of in many languages. It could refers to your own father. It also could refers to someone with the very first person, the very first king. So here they used the very special words 但 to refers to this first Zhou people, Hou Yi. And in modern Chinese, 诞 means to give birth. And another word is very interesting. 牛羊匪自知. 自 means to normally explained as love, but you can see from the radicals, kids under the roof, so which means the kids was protected, was take care of. But today, the very original meaning of this character totally lost. We can see that from this point. Okay, the fourth paragraph. 胆识仆妇，克其克夷，以救口实. The father, Houji, was on his feet and on his hands, crawl. He can distinguish, he can questioning. All this is for the purpose to feed the people, to find the food. Okay, here is the thing. 仆妇 crawl on the feet and the hands. So this describes how the working status of the father Houji was, because he was treated as the god of agriculture. So he cultivated the crops from the very wild grass, and also he taught the people how to cultivate, how to plant the crops, and so his working status was always in the field, on his feet and hands, so that he just almost crawl on the field. So this is a very diligent working status, and he has a very smart source. Qi means he can distinguish. There's a crossroads. Qi basically means crossroads. So 克其 means he can distinguish which way to go. 夷 is the question. 克夷 he can questioning, or he can solve the question. So there's a lot of things need physical, need a lot of the hard physical work, but need a lot of hard mental work. So the father Houji was a very, very capable person, and all this is to find the food to feed the people. Okay, the next sentence. 一之任书，任书佩佩. So he cultivated the soybean. 任书 is the soybean. The soybean grows so prosperous. 禾艺岁岁，麻麦蒙蒙，瓜瓞梆梆. All kinds of crops are so abundant. It's a harvest. So the words 任书 the soybean, 禾艺 is a kind of crop, 麻麦 is two crops, 瓜瓞 is the melons. So I do believe here refers to 五谷. So the 五谷 is a very, very popular and delicate term for Chinese to refer to the crops, and but it's quite different from the concepts of today. You can see these two concepts. Even today, we still have arguments on the modern concepts of 五谷, the definition of 五谷, with rice or without rice. But you can see here there is no rice if it was referring to the very original concept of 五谷. And I doubt it strongly that the second crops, 禾艺, 禾 is a general term to refer to the crops. 艺 is equivalent or a loan words of 季, because you can see that 后季, right? This is the most important crops in the ancient China, in the North China, along the Yellow River, and there's no possibility that in this epic poems it doesn't mention the most important crops share the same name, or their first king, their first father was named after these crops. There's no reason, right? You can see the first 认书 and the second is 季, and then 麻麦, the 麻麦 is 2 crops, and the 瓜瓞, the melon, totally 5. This is I do believe this is a very original 5 crops, 五谷, in the ancient China. Okay, the 4th paragraph basically gave us the story when Houji grown up. So he was a very, very capable man. He bring the Zhou people into a tribe, and finally into a state, and into a dynasty based on the agriculture. So the most important and the fundamental reason how this tribe, this state, this dynasty was erected, you can see that the Zhou people know it very clearly. We are the best farmers. We have the best technology on agriculture, and our father is the god of agriculture. Okay, this is the 4th paragraph. And okay, for today is the part 1 video for this poem. I will finish the rest 4 paragraphs in the part 2 video. Bye bye for now.